Unfortunately, they were showing aggression, and they felt that Sarah Everard not deserved it, but she shouldn't have been out so late. And it was something that maybe she was wearing, maybe she had courted the murder, which wasn't the case at all.
That was Jane Grishy, manager of rape charity Jersey Action Against Rape, known as JAAR. And I'm Fiona Potney. I'm the news editor of Bailiwick Express, and this is our podcast. Each week we'll examine an important news story affecting islanders in further depth. In the few weeks since Sarah Everard was murdered on her way home, something seems to have broken across the UK, and the floodgates have opened. Girls who suffered in silence at schools across the UK have been speaking out about the sexual harassment they have been subject to. Inappropriate comments, sharing of intimate images without their permission, even assaults. These are just some of the behaviours, previously written off as banter or boys being boys, that are now being called out on website Everyone's Invited. It wasn't long before the ripples reached Jersey. Last month, JCG and Victoria College described some of the experiences recounted by their students as difficult to hear as they pledged to do more to tackle rape culture. But what is the root of these harmful attitudes towards women, and how can we tackle them? I spoke to Jane and JAAR's Community Engagement Officer, Zoe Collins-Fisher. I started by asking what local fallout the charity had detected in the wake of Sarah Everard's death.
What we found was that we got contacted by local schools, and on the back of the responses from some of the children of what they were saying to the teachers, they found that some of the responses that the young men in the class were not what they had expected. The sympathy wasn't there. The empathy wasn't there, and that shocked and surprised them, and so they felt that they needed to bring JAAR in to help, with discussions around this sort of like the whole area of safety, sexual safety, and what areas are sort of around consent, really. Unfortunately, they were showing aggression, and they felt that Sarah Everard not deserved it, but she shouldn't have been out so late. And it was something that maybe she was wearing, maybe she had courted the murder, which wasn't the case at all.
We can assume that no boy or man is born misogynistic. So what do you think was the root cause of some of these attitudes?
I think there's always going to be a lot of conversation around the myths of rape. The myths of rape, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, is to do with, what she was wearing, whether she was drinking, certain behaviours. But I think a lot has been said about the pornography involvement, the fact that people feel that it's too accessible, it's free, and if you've got a handheld device, all you have to do is log in and there it is. And people we know are watching it during whilst they're at school. And it's just, we're concerned about this sort of behaviour, really.
According to Zoe, it's not just porn that can promote unhealthy ideas about women, but the mainstream media too.
The media and high-profile advertising campaigns are unfortunately promoting very promiscuous, very damning advertising that people are being exposed to. They have things called gangbang adverts, and these are high-profile fashion brands using these terminology. And in the gaming world, there are videos on YouTube that the young minds are following and seeing, and it's very questionable behaviour about girls at parties and men at parties and boys at parties and what is happening.
The 2019 Jersey Schools survey found that online pornography was classed as the main source of information about sex for half of boys in Year 12 and 25% of those in Year 10. Do you think they're looking to porn to satisfy some kind of gap in their sex education?
I think there's always going to be a sort of an inquisitiveness towards it. I'm thinking back to my day. Many years ago, you had the top shelves where you'd find the magazines. You had your page 3 models. You also had your mother's catalogues where it showed the underwear photographs. I think there's always going to be an inquisitiveness there, but I think it's the level, it's the degree of graphicness that they are coming across. That's the problem.
A study by the UK Government Equalities Office last year found links between consumption of pornography and viewing women as sex objects, as well as acceptance of sexual aggression towards women. But part of the problem is that it's so widespread, and trying to stop people viewing it almost seems futile.
Well, I'm sort of passionate about the fact that I think it's never going to go away. Porn's been there for hundreds of years. I don't know, hundreds. Yes, it has, I think. For hundreds of years, we can say that pornography has been there. But I think we need to kind of discuss with the young people about it, about where it comes from, the big fat cats who produce it, how much money they make from it, and down to the sort of like the effects that it can have on their physiology. The fact that we know by research that erectile dysfunction can occur because people want very graphic images to sort of stimulate them. And if they're not getting the same sort of imagery that in their own love lives as they may see on the screen, they might sort of like feel, well, I want something a bit more. So that's I want to sort of like start the discussions around that. I don't think it's right to go in preaching saying, pornography is terrible, because I think, if you're a consenting person and you want to look at something or try something out, it's fine. I think it's the problem lies is when it takes over someone's life, and we do know that it's highly addictive.
So what you're saying is the problem isn't the single fact that young people are accessing porn, it's that they might not understand the background around it.
Yeah, and I think it's good to start the discussion with them because it needs to be explored. I mean, we can tell them it's bad, but they need to have that critical thinking whereby they come to the conclusions themselves. Because we can preach, but they won't listen, then they certainly won't take it in. So that's why we need to kind of talk to them about it, and we need not to be embarrassed about these difficult subjects.
How is JAAR starting some of those conversations, and what initiatives does it have planned this year?
We wanted to run a consent campaign this year just because obviously what's happening in the world. We really want to go out and tell people about consent and help them understand what consent is, what it means, what it looks like. So we are working with Drama Lab, a local drama school here on the island, and we are going to hopefully creating a series of roadshows to go into secondary schools and colleges and youth groups to go in and talk to the various age groups about consent. And Drama Lab are going to come in and help and do a few scenarios. We're going to get the young people involved. We're going to pause it. We're going to ask them what they think, if they can relate to what they've seen, what consent looks like, what healthy consent looks like, because there's a big misconception, obviously we know, about what healthy consent looks like. We want to promote healthy sexual relationships, but it needs to be in a consensual manner. There's a lot of information regarding the law around consent that a lot of people don't realise. Taking a photo, sharing it, if that is then shared onto without the knowledge of the person in the photo, is actually breaking the law. You can be put on the sex offenders register for it, which obviously will then ruin your life going forward. So there's a lot of details that quite a lot of the young people aren't aware of, and we really want to help them understand so they can then go forward in their lives and consensually have good relationships.
And what does a healthy relationship look like, and a consenting relationship look like?
Well, to give consent means you have to freely give consent to either have an act done to you or you perform an act onto somebody else. There has to be no threatening, no coercion. It needs to be done in a safe environment. You can't give consent if you're under the influence of alcohol or drugs. That's quite a big misconception. People will go out and have a good time. It's great to go out and have a good time and have a drink, and then end up in a situation where you could have originally said yes, but then as you sort of start the act, you could then become sort of non-consensual in your body language, or you're not emotionally connecting, you're not making eye contact, you're kind of gone still, and that's when the consent is then withdrawn. You can't carry on because you can obviously see that one person in the act is not consenting anymore. So that's a big misconception. So people will often go out, have a good time, say yeah, go home, great, start to have sex together, and then it can then change very quickly, because you can say yes, but then if you say no at any point, that means you have to stop. You can't carry on. That's non-consensual then.
We know that on average children are aged 10 when they first see porn. So some of these harmful attitudes may be born very early. How can we teach younger children about concepts of consent?
There is a need to start the conversation much younger. We know children in primary schools are being witness to things and exposed to things, so it would be great to just start those conversations a lot younger. I mean, I have a little girl myself, and during COVID at school, the teachers were talking to them about hugging. It's not, we can't hug everybody, but that's really great, because I know it was brought up because of COVID and encouraging social distancing, but actually it's really good to sort of have those discussions at primary school about hugging and cuddling and kissing, and not everybody likes it, not everybody feels comfortable. So if we can work with the younger primary schools, it would be great, and I think the younger we get it, the hopefully the more impact that we have.
Jane thinks that conversations also need to take place in the home.
It would be good to be able to work with parents and guardians on this, because I think they need to be more aware of what their child may be seeing online. And that's why to have the ability to do interviews like this, just maybe being listened to by a parent that will think, okay, my son, my daughter has got a handheld device that they can access this, these pornographic sites, because even if you put a parental block on, they're clever, they can override them. So I think it's important to work with parents, teachers and guardians on this, just to make them aware that they may think that their child isn't looking at these websites, but they possibly are. They more than likely are, because if there's someone in the playground who's looking at them, it'll have a knock-on effect. So I just think it's to get the conversation with their child, their young person in their household, to say, okay, are you looking at this? Well, let's just discuss this. Let's see. Is this do you think this is a normal relationship? Do you think this is what happens? Just to be open with that. If you are angry at them, it's going to send it underground, isn't it? They're going to do it, but they're certainly not going to be open. I think it's to have the openness. It's to work with them, to sort of to explore together, maybe not explore the websites, but to explore the subject matter together, and to sort of give examples of good relationships, or what a good relationship is all about.
But it's not just parents, teachers and charities that should be questioning the harmful narratives promoted by porn, busting rape myths and stamping out lad culture and the misogyny that goes with it.
This, unfortunately, is a global problem. It's a world problem, and we need everybody and the people that have the following and are in strong positions to come out and really call out any sort of behaviours and languages that is being, used and trivialised in a way, and to really support the message of, consensual sex and reducing, language that is that goes on to sexual harassment, and really get behind rape charities and support the message that we're all trying to deliver.
So you think everyone has a part to play in stamping out rape culture and spreading positive messages?
Absolutely. I mean, we know that it's only a very small percentage of males that have this, this phrase, toxic masculinity. Unfortunately, they tend to be the loudest. So there's a lot of conversations and language being had that in every social group, in every setting, that you can hear pretty much on a daily basis. And we all have a responsibility to, when we hear that, to just call out and just give a different perspective, and just try to say, well, how do you think that makes the woman feel, or how do you think that person feels that you've said those things? And it's not, we can't make it a joke, we can't trivialise it, we can't normalise it. We need to try to be brave and in a safe way call out those people and those discussions when we hear them.
Some younger boys may be aware their friends are making comments that are unacceptable. What would be your advice to them?
I absolutely understand that it's really hard, and it's in a pressured situation, because you do want to have a laugh and you do want to, be popular, unfortunately, and there is this lad culture that's happening. But what you have to remember is that we all have masculinity, we all have women in our lives or girls in our lives that we are either in the family, or, we have sisters, we have daughters, we have close friends, and it's about trying to suggest that, how do you think your sister would feel if you said that? So it is about try to be brave, but it's hard. It's very hard. But and that's when we go back to role models to try and help in that scenario and try to encourage their followers to really call out behaviour and make it popular to call out behaviour. It's not make that the norm rather than try to turn it into something that could cause anxiety and something you're almost afraid to do. You have to do it in a safe way, and if we can all do it together, work together as a world and as a community, then hopefully we can achieve what we need to achieve.
In the wake of these conversations, JCG and Victoria College are currently working on a shared statement of values, perhaps something that other schools will start looking at. What foundations are needed to build a culture of respect in schools?
I was going to say respect. It is respect at the end of the day, to have equal respect for both sexes, because we're there to work together. There shouldn't be a sort of them and us. It shouldn't be boys versus girls. It should be all to do with us being equal and making sure that we all remain safe, that we protect each other.
Thank you, Jane and Zoe. If you've been affected by any of the issues raised in this podcast, JAAR will be happy to help. You can visit its website, jar.je, or call its helpline 01534 482 800. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please like and share it. The title track was called I Shift My Weight by Luno. More from me, Fiona Potney, and the Bailiwick Express team next week.